Hi everyone! In this video, I'm going to be going over how to reverse a linked list recursively. To do this, we're going to be adding two methods to the linked list class we built in our How to Build a Linked List video. The first method, called reverseHelper, is a helper function that takes in a node and reverses the rest of a linked list starting from that node. The next method, called reverse, acts as a driver function, calling the reverseHelper method on the head of a linked list so that we reverse the entire linked list. Since the reverseDriver method just calls the reverseHelper method on the head node, let's go over the reverseHelper method in closer detail with an example. Since this is a recursive method, we first have to deal with some base cases. The first base case is if the input node is none. If the input node is none, then we just return none, since we don't need to do anything to reverse an empty linked list. The next base case is if we have exactly one node left in our linked list. If we have exactly one node, meaning the input node's next element is none, then we can just return the input node, since we don't have to do anything to reverse a linked list with only one node. Now you might be wondering what this circled line is for, since it seems kind of redundant in our example, where the input node is already the head of our linked list. Let's circle back to that later. Now, let's say we have a bigger linked list with nodes A, B, C, and D. Our reverseDriver function calls the reverse method on the head node A, and since our linked list has more than one node, we don't fall under any of the base cases. The next line is a recursive call where we reverse the rest of our linked list starting from the next node, B. We have to take the recursive leap of faith and just assume that the rest of the list is magically reversed. In this case, the linked list starting from B is reversed so that D points to C and C points to B. The actual return value of the recursive call is the tail of the newly reversed list, B. Now you might be wondering, why did we choose this return value? Well, we need the tail of the newly reversed list because we need to set this reversed tail's next pointer to the input node. In this case, we set B's next pointer to A. Finally, we set the input node's next pointer to none. In this case, we set A's next pointer to none. And then we return the input node. Now you might be wondering, why do we return the input node, A? It used to be the head of our linked list, but now it's the tail since we've reversed the entire list. Well, recall earlier when we set our reverse tail variable to the return value of a recursive call to the reverseHelper method. So this reverseHelper function must return the tail of the newly reversed list in order for the recursive step to work. In this case, the tail of our reverse linked list is A, so we have to return A. So now we're done, right? Well, not exactly. The head of our linked list is still set to A, which is not what we want. We want the head of our newly reversed linked list to be D, not A. Recall the line of code in one of our base cases that seemed useless that we said we'd come back to earlier, where we set the head of our linked list to the input node. Well, if we wanted to reverse any linked list with more than one node, such as this linked list with nodes A, B, C, and D, that line of code would actually come in handy. I've drawn some red lines that indicate the recursive calls in the call stack. By the time we reach the end node, D, and there are no nodes left in our linked list, we've actually reached the new head of the linked list we want to reverse. This is when we set the head of our linked list to the input node, D. So by the time we start returning values up our call stack and actually reversing our linked list, the head of the linked list we are reversing is already set correctly. Alright, now we're truly done and we've successfully reversed our linked list recursively. Here's a summary of everything we talked about in this video. Hopefully this was helpful for you, and thanks for listening!